Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with a video that I did last year as well, and I want to introduce it this year too because I am thinking about downsizing my collection a little bit, especially when it comes to my eyeshadows. There is one very specific reason why I want to do that and why it has kind of approached very quickly, and I will discuss that in my next beauty budget update, so make sure to check that out. But today I'm gonna go through the palettes that are on the shopping block for me. So palettes that I want to get rid of, maybe keep a couple of shades, things that I want to play with more, get to know, see what I want to do with. And I have 15 to share with you today, so there's gonna be quite a few. So without any further rambling, I'm gonna jump into the video. But before I do so, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So like I said, I have 15 palettes and we're going to start off with Anastasia. I'm going to just simply go from the top of my kind of spreadsheet down and then just pick out the palettes that are on the shopping block. So the first one I have to share with you today is actually my Soft Glam palette. I do really love this palette and I honestly don't think it's one that I'm going to get rid of. There is one specific reason why I added this one in here, and that is because I am considering doing kind of a bit of frankening with my palette. So with palettes like this, where I really do love the color story, I think it's a beautiful palette, and honestly looking at it now, I used to love it. But what I'm thinking about doing is actually removing some of the shadows in here, simply because I have realized that I have so many beautiful eyeshadows in my collection, specifically shimmer, special sparkly eyeshadow, which is what I want to reach for when it comes to shimmers. And then there's shades in here like, you know, fairy, glistening, rose pink, that are just so satiny that when I use those I always top them anyway. And I just feel like I'd rather kind of get use out of my special shadows than the ones that are in here. So my kind of plan with some of my palettes, I'm not saying that this palette is going to happen too, because I'm going to play around with the palettes in the side later on. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of those eyeshadows and I'm going to replace them with similar special eyeshadows. I have actually recently, I filmed this a couple of days ago, but it will be up next week. I filmed a dupes video in my single eyeshadows. So what I'm planning to do is actually use some of those dupes and then press those into palettes like this. So that is my plan, but with this palette specifically, the color story there's nothing wrong with. The reason why it is on my shopping block is simply because of those lackluster shimmers. So that's the first palette that I'm gonna share with you, and again, my plan with these aren't necessarily to declutter them. I just want to play around with them and make a decision on what I want to do. So that is the first one. The second one from Anastasia is actually my Subculture palette. Subculture, this palette is one that I wanted to love. I mean, I do still like it, but I don't ever reach for this palette really when it's in a project. I don't really feel very inclined to reach for it. There are some beautiful shadows in here, but I don't know, they're just a bit too grungy to me. They're not like as kind of vibrant as I want them to be. Like, I don't want them to be like rainbow super bright eyeshadows, but I just want them to be a bit more, I guess, vibrant. But these ones, I don't know, there's a lot of shades in here that I do really love. I love Roxy, Electric, Dawn rather. I don't like Destiny actually. I love Fudge, I love New Wave, Edge. I really like All Star too. So like about half the palette I do really like, but the other half I'm a bit unsure about. So this is one, I have actually a couple palettes that are similar in this kind of color story in this video, and I just want to go through them and see which one I prefer. This one it looks very, very loved and has a lot of pans in it, which, I mean, it is loved, but it's just one that is very loved due to being in different projects. But I don't know, I just want to get to know this palette a bit more. I want to reach for it for more like full looks, because I only ever reach for this one as a complementary palette, so I want to get to know this one as a standalone, and so that is the next one. The next palette is probably my least favorite Anastasia palette, if I'm being honest, which is surprising because it's one of the best formulas, and I know a lot of people love this palette, but the color story is just not my favorite, and that is actually the Jackie Aina palette. This is one that I might have mentioned before that I really loved, but the more I play with it, the more I feel like it's just not my colors. Let's be honest, I love these 6 here, even like this kind of these 7 here, so like that half of the palette like these here. I love all of those eyeshadows. I mean, Literature is my favorite, but I still get used out of it, and I love that side. However, the other side, specifically these 5 here, I just don't love those kind of pinky, kind of, I don't know, pinky red tone purples on me. Mainly because they are very saturated, and you know, I said with the Subculture palette that I wanted that to be more saturated, but with this one, those tones just don't look right on me, in my opinion. Also similar thing here, these 2 shimmers, very lackluster. And you know, I do like Supreme honestly. It's mainly like these 4 here that I don't love. So looking at the palette, I mean, there's a lot of here that I do love, so maybe it's another one that I'm going to franken. Mainly maybe remove these 2 shimmers here and place them. I think if I did that, I would love this palette a lot more. Because I mean, Sam in here, that could be an indie eyeshadow. I don't know if you can pick up how sparkly that is, but that could definitely be an indie eyeshadow. So I think pairing some other indie eyeshadows in here, that would really put this palette up a little bit in my ranking. But yeah, I want to play around with this palette more and get to know it, like I said, so that is the next one. Then lastly, for Anastasia palette, we have this one right here. This one is one that I got from my boyfriend a couple of years ago, and I do love the color story, but it's just a bit excessive to me. There's a lot of shades in here that I feel are repetitive, that I don't like, and so on, but there's also shades in here that I love. So this is what the color story looks like. And the ones that I like don't really reach for is obviously the pressed glitters in here are not the best, so I never really reach for those. I mean, the blue in here, it's nice, it's vibrant, but again, the formula, when I want to reach for blue, is so rare that I'd rather reach for those special blues. And then the pink as well, I guess, is not my favorite, but you know, the rest of them I do like. These 2 shadows here are very similar though, so I wish one of those were different, but it's a shadow that I get used out of a lot. So this is probably a palette that I probably will keep it. It's very similar to the Soft Glam palette, but you know, I just want to again get to know it and see if it's worth keeping. And if I do keep it, maybe I do want to franken it a little bit as well. So yeah, that is my Anastasia palette. With Anastasia palette, I'm not sure how many of these I will get rid of, but I just want to play around with them a bit more and yeah, just see what I want to do. So that is why I put these 4 in here. So the next brand we're moving on to is Colourpop, and we're gonna start with the 9 pans, and I have 3 of them. They are right here. So a little sneak peek there, but the first palette we have is actually my Lilac You A Lot palette, and this one looks like this. So with this palette, I actually really love this palette. It's one of my favorite Colourpop palettes. However, very similar thing here. I recently reached for this one in my No Palettes Behind, was it? I think so. And the shimmers in here are just so overwhelming. I put them on my eyes. I wish I could put something else on my eyes. These weren't for me. So my thing, like what I'm thinking about this palette is I probably will declutter most of the shimmer. The one in the middle, Fluff, is quite pretty actually. It's a bit more textured and it has more shine to it. So that one is maybe one I would keep. But the remaining 3 are just again so lackluster that I probably would either scrape those out, replace them with more kind of sparkly eyeshadows, or depot this palette and mainly keep the mattes and put them in my like single Colourpop palette. I don't know if I would keep all mattes. I think this one down here, Zoned Out, is not my favorite. It's not very pigmented. So if I were to depot this one, I probably would get rid of this one too. So honestly, I would probably just keep like these 5 that I'm not covering right now. So we'll see what I do. I just want to kind of decide if I want to stand alone like purple lavender palette like this, or if I am ready to kind of depot this one too. So that is the next palette, which is the first one from Colourpop. Then the second one, which you also got a sneak peek of, is my Aha Honey palette. This is very similar. It's a all toned yellow palette, and this one again I do want to play around with. Similar thing, to be honest. I might depot this palette and keep my favorite shadows, mainly the mattes, or I might replace some of the shadows. I mean, I feel like in here the shimmers are a bit better, but again, I just want to replace some of them. Maybe these 2 here. I mean, the middle one is replaced as it is because that used to be pressed glitter, and I replaced it with a like yellow kind of orange shimmer, but that one is just not very special at all, so I could easily just replace that one. And then maybe the shade Dandy as well. I think with this one I'm less likely to depot it, to be honest. because I feel like I like more shades in here, so I probably will keep more of them, and then I would maybe just replace like the one in the middle and possibly this one here. So this one again, I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of anyway in the next couple of months, because it is more of a summery palette, so I'm thinking I'll kind of figure out what I think about it then, and then make a decision afterwards. Also, by the way, I don't really have any timeline on when I want these to be reviewed. I just want to play with them for the next couple of months, and then even if it's at the end of the year I want to follow up on them, I will, or if it's earlier, if I made a decision on them earlier, I will follow up then. But yeah, no timeline specifically with this. Then the last palette is my Mar palette, which is not the original Mar. This is kind of like a Franken palette of mine, and I do really love it. It's a really beautiful summer palette, but I'm just not sure if I need a specific palette like this when I can build my own palettes, and also I have other summery palettes. But there is just something special about this one, and like the kind of brightness of it. I think the blue background really does help as well. But I think I'm more likely to kind of depot this and declutter some of the shadows. Honestly, again, a lot of the shimmers are just very lackluster. Like El Rey would definitely go, so would Gridlock. These two here are a bit better, again more shiny, so maybe those two would stay. And then from the mattes, I will kind of have to see what I have dupes of. But again, I think this is one that I'm very likely to get rid of, and I just keep my favorite shades in my singles, to be honest. Then the last palette from Colourpop is another one of those that I mentioned are very similar to the Subculture palette in a way, that I want to kind of get use out of, and that is my At Forest Sight palette. This one is the Raw Beauty, Christy and Colourpop collab, and I got this from my friend Martina because she was decluttering it. And honestly, I have not really used this one at all. I think I've only used like 1 or 2 shadows in here since I got it, which is terrible, because it's been quite a while since I got it. So I do want to use this palette and just see how I like it, because again, I haven't really used this palette fully yet. It is more of an autumnal palette, so I'm not sure if I'll reach for it yet, if I will wait until autumn. But I do, honestly, I do love the kind of shades in here, and they look really pretty, and like the mattes are quite unique in my opinion, and also the shimmers just look very sparkly and very kind of textured, which I feel like if they are, I would probably keep this as a whole, because the Colourpop palettes, like the Colourpop shimmers rather, are kind of the reason why I want to get rid of the palettes a bit more, because the mattes are useful for me. Maybe if I have like a lot of dupes of them, I will get rid of them, but this palette is just really stunning and I love the packaging of it. So this is in here just because I want to play with it more. So next up, we're actually moving on to a brand that I love, and it's always shocking when I put these in my palette on the chopping block. And honestly, again, I don't think I'm going to get rid of either of these two. I think I'm more likely to get rid of the previous ones that I mentioned, like my Colourpop and my Anastasia palettes. But I wanted to include these because I just want to get more use out of them and see how I feel, because if I don't like the formula, I could just get rid of them, because, you know, even though they are expensive and they're from a brand that I really love, if I don't love the formula or the color story, I shouldn't keep them. And that brand is Natasha Denona. This first palette here is the Sunrise palette, and honestly, this color story is really beautiful. It's mainly the formula in here that I put it in for, but yeah, I do love this color story, but I don't reach for it enough, and I want to play around with it more and create, like, again, full looks with this palette to see how I like it. Because again, I had this in projects before, like no palette left behind and stuff, but when I reach for it that way, I usually use this one in combination with other palettes, and I just don't know how this works as a standalone palette. And I feel like also if I do that, I will be able to see the formula a bit better. So that is the first one out of my 2 Natasha Denona palettes that is in here. And the second one probably is no surprise, because I think this one was in my shopping block last year as well, and that is my Love palette. This one is probably my least favorite Natasha Denona palette, and I mentioned that before. This one was actually my No Pan Left Behind palette, project this year, but I just, again, reached for it with other things, and I didn't use this as a standalone palette, which I want to do. And I mean, that's shame on me, because I had a great opportunity to do that earlier this year, but I just was planning too much and I was just kind of multitasking this with other things. But yeah, this is, I mean, it is a pretty palette. I don't like the color story of this one as much as I do the Sunrise palette, but again, it's in here because I don't know how it works, and what kind of looks it creates, and that's why I want to work on it a bit more. So yeah, that is the next one that is on my shopping block at the moment. So we have come to the last 5, and the next one is a very small palette, and that one actually comes from Charlotte Tilbury. I got this one as a free gift with purchase from Cult Beauty. Oh no, sorry, I got it from the advent calendar. So this one looks like this. It's a beautiful neutral palette. I haven't used it on my eyes yet. I swatched it a couple times and it seems nice. I wish that maybe this shade here was a matte, so there was 2 mattes, like one lighter and one deeper, but right now in here there's only 1 matte and 3 shimmers, whereas one of them is like a topper shadow and then the other was a bit more lackluster. So yeah, I want to just use this palette and see what look I can create with it, because I'm assuming I'm only gonna be able to create like one look from this, like a very neutral kind of, maybe like a bit sparkly because of the topper, but more of a neutral look from this. So I just want to see how I like that look, and I want to play around with this one, and if I don't like it I might actually go ahead and sell this one because it's so brand new. I mean, I've swatched it, like I said, a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 times, but I haven't even used it on my eyes. So I might play around with this one even just once and see how I like it and make a decision on it from there, but I just don't really know what I feel about this palette at all. It's nice to have a Charlotte Tilbury palette in my collection, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna keep it just because it's Charlotte Tilbury. So moving on to a brand that I have quite a few palettes from now actually, and 2 of them, which is that half of my palette from them? Yeah, I think so. It's on the shopping block, and that is Beauty Bay. So the first palette, as you saw, is my Book of Magic palette right here. This one has been for a long time my least favorite palette in my collection. I'm trying to already play around with it quite a bit more. I've had a few shadows in here in my panels eyeshadows. I've used the no pan left behind, have I? I think I have. But yeah, I had, like I said, a lot of these in my panels eyeshadows in my like different projects, just because I want to get used out of this palette and get to know it a bit more. Honestly, right now it's probably one of the palettes I'm leaning towards getting rid of, because I mean I love the color story, but I have these shadows in my collection, in my singles, and I don't need it, and I just need to downsize my collection a bit more. So this is one that I'm thinking about decluttering at some point, probably this year. And it's a shame because I actually bought this palette off eBay because I couldn't buy it because it got discontinued, and then I lusted for it and I wanted it so bad, and eventually I did pick it up from eBay, and it was slightly more expensive than it was when it was released. So it's a bit of a shame, but even so, I don't know, I got my use out of it at least. I mean, when I got it, it was basically untouched. It had no pans, no nothing, and I feel like I've gotten my use out of it at least. So we'll see what I do with this one. I want to play around with it more, like I said, and then make a decision, but this is probably one that I'm leaning towards getting rid of. And then the last palette from Beauty Bay, or the second palette from Beauty Bay, is the one that also falls into that subculture kind of category, like subculture at first sight, and that is my Wilderness palette. This one is a bit different. It's also larger, but let me just hold up at first sight because I have it next to me. So if I hold these 2 up together, you might be able to see what I mean with like overlapping color story. I feel like this one definitely leads more kind of blue-greenish, but you know, they're kind of like similar kind of vibes, I guess. I would say, like, when it comes to grunginess, or like, yeah, kind of grunginess, subculture is most grungy, then this one is the most bright. So they are different, but I just want to see how they all compare, because I don't think I need all 3 of them, to be honest. But who knows, I might keep all of them. But this one is more, it's kind of the closest thing I have to a rainbow palette in my collection, and it is beautiful, but I had this as my product level up level, was it level 5? I believe so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5 last year, and that's how I hit the pans and got the use out of it. And I got a good run out of this palette and got a lot of use out of it, and I did like the looks that I created from it, but it's not my favorite. However, it is, like I said, one of my brightest palettes in my collection, so maybe I should keep it around for that. But I don't create like a lot of bright looks in my everyday anymore. I do it for filming sometimes, but I go for more things like this as well when filming nowadays. I don't go to like really intricate, super bright kind of contrasting looks as much, because I don't know, I just haven't been as inspired, I guess. But I'm trying to get back into that. I'm also planning a lot of stuff, so I'm just always focusing on those, and that's kind of determines my looks. But I do want to get into more kind of playtime, and I feel like this palette would be really beautiful for that. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't used this palette yet this year because I used it so much last year, but I think also it's more of an autumnal palette, in my opinion, like summer to autumn, so I'll probably reach for it then. But I think after that kind of time period, I probably will make a decision on this one, and see what I want to do. But I'm probably more likely to keep that one compared to the Book of Magic palette, but that is the next palette. The last 2 we have are from miscellaneous brands. The next one has been in this, I think it was on my shopping block last year as well, and that is my Blueberry Muffin palette. I love the quality in here. I love like the shades, and like the I don't have a lot of blues like this in my collection. and it's also like a lot of kind of neutral tones that I could get use out of, and these blues pair really nicely with these kind of more warm tone browns. So it is a beautiful palette, but I just don't ever want to reach for this one. This is never a palette that I'm going into a collection and be like, oh, today I want to reach for Blueberry Muffin. I just don't. So that's kind of why it's in here. I just again want to get use out of it more. It is kind of like a wintry color story, but I didn't use it this winter, so we'll see. I don't know, I'm just torn about it because I feel like it's a hyped up palette and the formula is definitely living up to the hype. It's just one that I don't reach for very often, so we'll see what I end up doing with this one later this year. When it comes to like kind of replacing shadows, which I talked about earlier in this video, this is one that I probably wouldn't do that with because the shimmers in here are actually quite nice. There are like maybe two that aren't as spectacular as the rest, especially Crumble up here isn't as sparkly, but they're still really pretty and really shiny. So I do love the shimmer formula in here, so that wouldn't be something I would do. So if I was to keep this palette, I would keep it as a whole. Then the last palette that I have is another one that I got from my friend Martina, and the reason why it's in here is because I have not yet reached for it since I got it, and that is my Luna Beauty Eternal Crisp palette. This is a palette that I was so excited to get because I never tried Luna Beauty and I heard so many good things about it, and the color story is actually quite nice. It's definitely more cool toned and more smoky than any of my other palettes. Specifically, like I feel like I'm thrown off by this bottom row because they're so smoky, but the color story otherwise is really pretty, and the shimmers seem quite sparkly, quite nice, especially the silver here seems really stunning. And the mattes I have swatched and they're so creamy to the touch, so I want to see how they blend. I feel like they will blend really nicely, so I'm excited to play around with this palette, but I've mainly put it in here because I haven't reached for it yet, and I had all the opportunities to reach for it, especially in winter, because I feel like this is more of an autumn winter palette and I didn't reach for it then. So I guess I just put it in this one in here to make sure that I reach for it and make it an opinion about it, because it seems to be a palette that I don't reach for on my own, and if I don't reach for it in the next couple of months, it needs to go because I haven't reached for it yet. But if I do reach for it, I just want to see again what my opinion about it is and if I do want to keep it. So that is why I'm including this palette. And yeah, I love this packaging, but it is a bit on bulky to store because this kind of bit is raised a bit, but it's very definitely stunning to look at. But those were all the palettes that are in my shopping vlog at the moment. Let me know your thoughts about these palettes and if there's anything that you think I should declutter, or what, like, maybe not what do you think, but what do you think that I will declutter at the end of the year or whenever I do an update on this, and what do you think I will keep. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and otherwise I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.